Dr. Jazz.
Maribor. I don't think you played in Ljubljana actually with Charles. So
Yeah,
in July last year actually. So
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
I think I've only been there twice actually, or maybe three times, but yeah, not too many times
I think
considering it's.
with Pat, you were also in Ljubljana, right? I
I
think I
think
saw you on
so,
that gig.
and I think I played there with Brad at this that the guy who's got the TV show.
Oh yeah, yeah, Brane. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but this is a very long time ago.
That's like almost 30 years, or oh, shit. No,
Uh,
but you Brad played in Maribor in
oh,
late
really?
90s. I don't know if you were on that gig. I was on
I
that
don't.
gig, but I don't know if you played bass on that one. It was a
I mean,
trio.
probably, but it's funny. I don't remember playing that town.
Don't remember. It was an
Right.
outside gig, but I know Brad played in Maribor. So
Okay.
yeah. But anyway, yeah.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Thanks for finding your time once again.
Yeah,
So,
my pleasure. My pleasure.
uh, Larry, there's so many things I want to ask you. You know, I checked. I think I have you like on 80 CDs or something like that, and 10 of them are from last year. So you're incredibly busy. But I listened to Fly Trio today, and you know, you wrote some music for the trio, like Kingston is one of your tunes, which is beautiful. And I
Thank
wanted
you.
to ask you, where does the band leading aspect come for you? I mean, have you ever considered becoming a band leader, or do you have that somewhere in your mind also? Or
Yeah, it's an obvious question to ask for somebody who's been doing what I've been doing for 40 years. Um, you know, I guess I have a couple different responses to that. One of them, as a bass player, I've been feeling quite fulfilled over the decades, musically, to express myself in many different ways with different people. I'm not really compositionally, but in every other possible way that I found very satisfying. So there wasn't this urge eating away at me, like, "Oh, I gotta lead a band. And also, I'm not a prolific composer. I'll write when asked, or
mm,
I'll write like for Fly. There's very specific music for Mark and Jeff, which I really appreciate. Otherwise, I'm just kind of writing at home for fun and just to kind of learn some stuff. So I don't have this backlog of material that's just kind of waiting to be recorded, like quite a few of my friends.
mm,
So I think that's another reason. So I've just kind of um, been satisfied doing what I do, and then with Fly, it's a collective trio, so it's kind of the best of both worlds.
yeah,
Or maybe it's the worst, because I mean, the problem with Fly, for example, is that it's just hard for us to kind of commit to doing it because everybody's doing different things all the time.
yeah.
But hopefully, we're going to do some more. I mean, I was just talking to Mark the other day about that, so it's just really finding the moment to do it.
But the trio is still alive, right? I mean, you did that record like what, 2 years ago or 3 years ago?
No, it's been a long time since we've actually played. We did a couple gigs a couple years ago, but
Mm,
really we've taken a long hiatus. Mark has been really focused on doing his
cool
band,
stuff. Yeah.
and Jeff and I were busy doing different things. But yeah, I mean, it for me, it's one of the really special musical environments that I really treasure, because it's such a long-standing musical relationship, personal and musical relationship. I mean, I go back with Jeff since I
Mm.
was a teenager, and the same with Mark. I played with him in one of these kind of all-state bands back in California when we were
Oh,
both in high
really?
school.
Oh, wow.
So I've known both of them since probably around 16 years old. It's just crazy.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, being a teenager, Phil, your brother told me that basically you were like, what, like 16 or 17, and on the West Coast you played like professionally almost already. I mean, like you accompanied like everyone there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was very fortunate to be at that place at that moment, because I was able to do gigs where, obviously, if I had lived in New York, I wouldn't have had those opportunities. They would have called somebody much more proficient. But yeah, I met some people early on. Obviously, my brothers helped me a lot to begin with. And I did take some lessons on electric bass, which I started on, and then
Okay.
some. Once I started playing upright, which was around maybe 13 or 14, I started taking some classical lessons, um, which helped, to get comfortable with the size of the instrument. But I learned through just playing with my brothers, friends of ours in school, and then yeah, luckily I started getting these gigs that were really way beyond my abilities. I was just very fortunate to have very patient elders who helped me along. So yeah, it was that period that people would be coming through town in San Francisco without a band, pick up a band for a week. So I got to do that a lot.
Right.
And then there were a lot of amazing musicians living in the area at that time. They had Joe Henderson,
Oh yeah.
Stan Getz, Bobby Hutcherson, uh, plus some amazing drummers, Donald Bailey, Eddie Marshall. So, and then there was this great pianist named Larry Vukovic,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
who got me playing with him really early, and that turned me on to a lot of musical experiences. So, I mean, I
Wow.
completely learned how to play jazz that way.
So basically self-taught and on the stage, and
Yeah, it's funny to say self-taught
I
because
mean, yeah,
I was
yeah, yeah.
formerly self-taught. No, that people taught me.
Well, yeah, through the plane, yeah.
And it was also that
Amazing.
it's a little different now with people. They have a lot to say now, but nowadays. But back then, people wouldn't say so much about what I should work on. I mean, I wish they had said more actually, but most of it was kind of intuitive. Uh, or it was somehow kind of coded what they were trying to tell me what to do. So I'd have to kind of ponder it for a while, and it would come to me slowly over the years. But as far as repertoire, I learned a lot, doing that, and just kind of what's expected of the instrument, what people want from the bass. And I think it instilled in me kind of early on that joy of going into a musical situation, making it sound as good as I could possibly
Hmm.
can do it. And that was very satisfying for me.
Yeah. How were the elders towards you since you were like 17 and let's say Bobby or Joe you mentioned then? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, they were incredibly kind,
mm,
and really just kind of showed me through their playing. I
yeah,
think they could sense that I was up for the challenge at least, and definitely behind the game as far as repertoire and experience. But I always felt like in this kind of a safe environment that I
yeah,
mean I learned had to learn very quickly, and now being a teacher in the universities scene,
yeah,
I know the difference about how we teach verbally in a classroom. It's um it's a very safe environment, and we have to kind of know that that's just one side of these things, and like really the world outside of that academic scene is really where you get your knowledge from. So I try to pass that along through, not saying that I have all the answers, that they're really going to find the answers in the midst of
mm.
playing. So
No, but
especially for jazz, yeah.
you got the best, I think, because like your generation, maybe the last or even before you was one of the last that you got to experience to play with with
Yeah,
Art and Alvin and all these guys being put on
yeah,
the stage and just survive
yeah, or not, yeah,
or not. Yeah,
or
yeah,
yeah, learn really quickly what's not happening. Yeah, no, I do. I feel fortunate in the timing of it for sure. And it's funny, how important timing is and luck is to all of our situations. So I don't take it for granted at all.
mm. But you studied literature, right? I've read.
I did. So when it came time for college, I decided to stay in the Bay Area because I was playing so much, and I felt like, well, that this is my musical education. Um, it was still, this is the late '80s or mid '80s, and it was still thought that, well, it wasn't assumed that you go to music school, I guess, if you're,
Yeah.
now it's kind of assumed, I would think. Um, So I chose to stay in town, and I got a very another fortunate offer through Stanford University because they were trying to start a jazz or try to enhance their jazz program at that point. And they had hired Stan Guest as their artist in residence.
Oh
And
wow.
so with him and some other people, it really it became possible for me to go there. And so I thought, wow, such a great opportunity. I'll take advantage of that and continue my musical education at night. So it was a fine balance. I mean, looking back, it was quite busy because I'd be playing at nights and going to school during the day, studying something very different. But
Yeah.
it was something else that I really liked. From my earlier years was just reading books, and the program there was really good. So I take advantage of it.
Yeah, no, no, asking you because I studied literature as well, and there are quite many jazz players who are like really into literature, and I
Yeah,
think it's a nice combo, you
it's
know.
a nice parallel, right?
Yeah,
And
it's a beautiful universe. Yeah,
yeah, about forming a sentence into a paragraph into a book,
yeah,
and it's another form of communication,
yeah, yeah.
so and there's so many different styles that that you could go into and immerse yourself in and say, wow, that really, this person had a very unique slant on this way of approaching this thing. We're all trying to do something in music, but we all have our unique personalities, which lead us down different avenues and
Hmm.
different influences, different
Yeah,
ideas of what we want to get to.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love that. I love that
Yeah.
about literature. Well, and jazz, actually, music. I mean, uh,
Yes.
when did you decide? When did you have a point that you said like, okay, I want to go to New York, move to the East Coast, since you were busy on the West? I mean,
I mean, I kind of always wanted to. It was always an idea. There, once again, there weren't many options at that point. It was either LA or New York. And for even though I did kind of have this, me and Mark Turner actually joke about this because we imagine an alternate universe that we both decided to go to LA and be studio musicians
session musicians.
because
Yeah.
because that's kind of what I wanted to do when I was
Wow.
really young. I thought that would be such a great livelihood, and I always liked reading music and, like I said, like putting myself in different scenarios and trying to make it work. So, I mean, I guess I didn't take it that seriously because when it became time to possibly move there, it really didn't really come up. It was New York was the idea, just the obvious reasons, the
Yeah, yeah.
number of great musicians and the energy that came. And I had visited. My brother Phil had lived there, was living there already when I was still in college, so I would go out there and visit him and had a sense of the potential of the city for me. And I got to say, when I did move there, I moved to New York in 1991,
Already. Wow.
uh,
Okay.
and I learned so much so quickly there. It's really true that energy is forces everybody to kind of be at their best, and to be surrounded by great bass players, great musicians. It's like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. It's like constantly eating it up. And while I was getting to some stuff back in California through some great experiences, I really feel like I didn't get to certain very fundamental things until I got to New York.
Yeah.
And I was forced to this like really, dig deep into the foundational stuff. And it really hit me hard those first few years. And luckily as a bass player, you're able to play right away. So I was able to work right away. But I
Mm.
feel like I really learned a lot. Those first maybe 5 years were really pushing me forward at a faster rate than I would have if I'd stayed in California.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah, I wanted to ask you that, how those first years were with. I remember talking with Drew Grass once, and he said, like, he played with a horn player or a piano player, and he said, like, yeah, I really like your playing. And he took out his black book and wrote down Drew's number, right? And Drew checked like the names, and above him were like, I don't know, Eddie Gomez and Mark Johnson, and he was like, man, shit, I'll never get a gig. It's like, and
Right.
it's kind of
Right, that's
scary
true.
if you think about it, like moving there, right? When it's 100
Yeah,
top of the top bass players. I mean,
but it is bass, and every band pretty
yeah,
much needs a bass.
yeah,
So it does, that pyramid. You'll get to that level at some point, and there's I think it's probably still the same, even though my sense of day to day in New York City is not what it was. But I think there's always a need for a great musician in New York City, whether you're a bass
mm,
player, a drummer. I mean, there's always somebody asking me, who should I call for this? This like the list isn't that big considering it's New York City, and everybody has a different idea of what they want, so not that you can satisfy everybody. So, you want to kind of find your place in that
yeah.
world. So for me, well, first of all, so I went to Boston for a year to play with Gary Burton. So when I
Oh,
moved to New
okay, okay,
York,
that helped. Yeah,
yeah, when I moved to New York, I already kind of had a gig, on the road. So like I paid my rent and stuff.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I started working in town pretty quickly. I had some friends who would throw me gigs, but then I met people very quickly. Either like doing sessions at people's houses. Like I used to go to Kevin Hayes's house a lot, and we'd
Oh,
play with Bill Stewart. So I got to play with Bill really quickly, even though I had met Bill in California. Um, but and then Joe Henderson, who I had played with in California, I started playing with once I was in New York.
oh,
So
wow, okay.
certain gigs put me out there in a way that really helped to at least let other people know I was there. And then pretty quickly I met Brad and Josh Redman I knew from Boston, so we would play a lot. So um, that kind of core thing happened fairly quickly. I mean, with Brad, we were by 93 or 94, I think we
Already,
were
wow,
playing already.
wow.
So yeah, things got moving pretty quickly.
Mm. Did you know already with Brett, it's gonna be this magical tree? If it's like a modern, when you think of Bill Evans trio, and if you could talk to Scott LaFaro, I would love to ask him that when they started playing. Like, how was your feeling in the beginning when starting with Brad? I mean, since you've played so long with him, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's any very special, unique setting that you find yourself in. You get that feeling that you can do no wrong. Like everything you play is cool. Everything you play is heard and reacted to on some level.
Mm.
And it was like that with Brad and Jorge. It was super cozy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
musically cozy. And I think we all shared an idea of what we wanted to get to. It wasn't like it was obviously it was Brad's band. He brought in the material, but I think we all shared an idea of what we wanted to get to. And Brad's idea of a trio was very much to let us all kind of have a say in the music, and to write with us in mind, but also to kind of leave stuff open to how we interpret things. And I think we all fed each other
Yeah.
for many years that way.
Did you guys talk a lot about music? Or just started playing actually, or
Yeah, very little.
just yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
even over the years, I mean, I think we rehearsed and talked about the music very, very little. We
Mm.
rehearsed very little because we were always playing. We were always able to get to new material at sound checks and stuff like this. I think we rehearsed a handful of times in the
Oh, well.
whole 30 years or something. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, that the obvious thing of how do you get better? Well, you play a lot. You play a lot, and we're once again the fortunate thing was Brad got a record deal, had a booking agent, and we were able to kind of hit the road pretty hard. And if I look back at like my date books from that period, it's really interesting because like we go to Europe for a few days, come home, go back for a few. No, it was like
Crazy.
in and out a lot. Stuff I would not do nowadays. But then we were all in our 20s, and it really made sense. And musically, it really helped, I think, develop a sound, which is it's obviously the hard thing to do nowadays is to develop a band sound
True.
because the chances to do 4 weeks or 5 weeks on the road is not everybody can do that.
No. It's getting
So
heavier and heavier in Europe after COVID. You know, it's
yeah,
man. It's I don't know what your experience is, but for me, in Europe, past after COVID, it's really hard. I mean,
I think it's hard everywhere. I mean,
yeah,
it's going to be really interesting to see what touring means in 10 years.
yeah,
Um, I have a feeling it's going to be quite different than we experienced it, you know. So I'm just kind of, once again, I feel lucky that
yeah.
I got it when I could, and now it's cool. I don't need to be out as much, but when I do go out, it's always enjoyable.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Now you're
Yeah,
you're you're there. So,
yeah.
how did in the midst of you mentioned those date books, the gig books, and you're playing with Brad, and then Pat Metheny, which I think I saw with Pat in Ljubljana and Bill. He comes along, and then he's touring relentlessly as well. Like, how did that go, and how did you get that gig with Pat? I mean, since I'm a guitarist, and playing with Pat, what did that mean for you?
Yeah, I mean, Pat was one of those musicians who I really, grew up listening to and respected. So I felt like I really, you know, I connected to it already before having played with him. Um, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how. I think he probably heard me with Brad,
Mm,
but we he had called me. It was probably around '96, and we did some trio gigs in Japan. Um, and then we came back. So I'm already playing with Brad at this point, but then we came back, and then we started doing some gigs around the States with Brian Blade,
mm,
and then after that with Bill. So it was this kind of different trio formations, and for me it was fantastic because Pat in that I mean in any format, he's
yeah,
so special, but that was like ideal for me as a bass player to play trio because I played a lot of saxophone trio stuff, whether it was with Mark or Joe Henderson or different people, and um, I love that that place for the bass. There's so much room for the instrument, and I feel like it frees you up. It kind of makes you really pay attention to what the music needs at every moment. Does it need more harmony? Does it need more clear rhythm? Or does it need less of those things? It's those are subjective decisions, but they're kind of based on what you are taking from the music objectively too.
yeah,
So um, for me, guitar trio is more similar to that, as opposed to piano trio. I mean, guitar, yeah, it plays chords, obviously, but for the
yeah.
most part,
Different.
it's like kind of more single line stuff, and especially with Pat. So that was fantastic, and obviously compositionally, he's one of the great composers. So that was beautiful, and so I kind of juggled both things with him and Brad. I think maybe there was one summer tour I couldn't do with Brad because of that, but that it all worked out, and and then eventually we were able to do some stuff with Brad
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
which was
yeah.
really
That was
fun. Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah,
But I mean, Pat is such a sound guru. He's like every great musician I've played with. Their sonic fingerprint is so strong. You can pick them out in one bar,
yeah,
basically,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Whether it's Pat or John Schofield or Brad or Mark or
Mark, yeah, yeah.
whoever.
All the
Yeah,
guys. Yeah,
yeah, and so that's always been something I desire too. It's like, okay, what is the sound that I'm making, and how is it meshing with the other sounds that are coming on the bandstand? How do they mix together? Um, and so I learned a lot from Pat in those ways as well of the sonic importance of the music,
mm,
and I mean in every possible way. Pat's just an amazingly high level of composition and improvising, and also how to tour, how to do it right, how to make a set. Very
yeah,
fundamental things that some people may not be thinking about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's You know, he's one of the best for me. Like you said, I have that real book of, you know, Omnibook, whatever, Pat Metheny. I
Right.
sometimes just pick up a tune and I'm like, man, you know, I know every tune, but still, when I check it out, like on the sheet music, I'm like, damn, man, it's so beautiful.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like incredible, you know, just
Yeah.
if you go back even to 76 to Bright Size Life, and it's just like, man, terrific stuff.
Yeah. And that was the other thing with that trio was that we were kind of pulling from a really wide range of material. We
Yeah,
would play stuff from Bright Size Life. We would play stuff from Rejoicing or 8081 or new stuff, obviously, that he had written. So it was kind of like here's your life, Pat Metheny, compositionally, which was fun because
that's amazing.
this whole path that you see, even those early compositions, they fit on one page of music,
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
real just tunes but they have a lot of meat to them so that you can feel really comfortable playing them over and over.
yeah. Like it's what is Sierra Born or that ballad?
Oh yeah,
You know, it's like half a page, 3/4,
right.
but it's amazing. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I think it's 3/4 or Unity Village. I knew. But yeah, yeah, beautiful. Yeah. How have you developed? You mentioned like this being recognizable by the sound, like Mark and Pat and all these guys, and I feel about you the same way when I listen. You know, even early on with Brad, let's say, were you always aware of that, like as a bass
Well,
player, your sound, and I mean, did you have like a hero bass wise that you said like, okay,
yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I have a lot of heroes, and I think a lot of them are sonic heroes, specifically, but I guess I feel that we end up becoming a combination of all these people filtered down through our own
yeah,
person, and then there's so much to producing a sound on each instrument. I mean, piano is so mechanical in its the way it's built, but yet you have two piano players sit at the same piano and they'll sound totally
yeah,
different.
that's amazing. Yeah,
Right? It's amazing.
yeah,
Obviously, with saxophone, guitar is interesting, right? Because you're dealing with electricity and amps, and there's so much to that. With bass, you know, um, it's more pure, I guess, in that
yeah.
it's just all right here, and so I've worked on my sound in many different ways, including through classical music, which has helped me to, um, I guess push my technique further and to I don't know. I mean, to me, it comes down to a lot to clarity of expressing yourself clearly, and the bass is by nature fairly unclear of an instrument. So the challenge is always to bring out the clarity, whether
Mm,
it's sonically, harmonically, melodically, rhythmically, in all those four ways. So classical music has helped with that to push my technique, I think. But then, yeah, it's so much is kind of in your head too of what you just think about, what's your ideal. You have an idea of what do you want to sound like, and then it's just kind of manipulating your two hands in order to get closer to it every day. And also recognizing that this is what we do have that nobody else has,
yeah,
right? It's the one thing that say nobody else can sound like you.
that's for sure. Yeah,
And we learn that quickly when we try to cop somebody. It's like, well, I could try to sound like so and so, and that process is really cool. I mean, I'm not saying that nobody should try to do that because I think you learn a lot about forming the technique involved in getting out different sounds, but you never hit it. You never get
yeah.
close to it. So it's always an approximation. But what you end up with is a lot of approximations that formulate your own sound eventually.
Mm,
So I don't know. I like, Gary Carr, the great classical bass player, once said that he goes to the bass every day because he wants to hear that sound that only he can make. And I really dig that because there's always somebody who could play more shit, who has got some,
yeah, yeah,
more technique, whatever it is, but nobody can make the sound that you make. And some of that is just the maturity of like, okay, this is who I am, and put it out there. But you have to put it out there because you're confident in it too. You're working towards this ideal sound that we all have. I think a little hint of it in our heads that we're trying to approximate.
Yeah, I find
And we
that so amazing because if you think about it, the jazz bass, or let's say jazz bass tradition, before you there were at least, okay, well, 50 or more bass players that, like you said, you hear two bars and you're like Sam Jones, Paul Chambers,
yes,
Mingus, Dave Holland, whoever. And your generation now is also the same. You hear Larry Grenadier, it's like, oh shit, it's Larry Grenadier. And it's amazing that still nowadays even newer players come and you're like, oh, Matt Brewer, or it's.
yes, yes.
I find that fascinating. That.
Yeah. Well, it's still we're all striving. That's the goal, I think.
Yeah.
And it's not just sonic sound, obviously, right? If you say, well, yeah, there's rhythm involved, there's the nuance, right? So it's the whole package that gives you that fingerprint. With some people, maybe it's a more harmonic idea, language that's, particularly their own. But usually it's a combination of all those things. I mean, I gotta say, I do wonder if it's as strong as it used to be. I mean, I find the way that people learn nowadays, not to sound like the old guy, but that the way people are learning now maybe doesn't offer quite the sense of the importance of the uniqueness. It's like, I need to do this. It's like a checklist that we're all thinking that, okay, I checked this off and now I'm cool. It's like, it doesn't work that way. And I think some of the way jazz is mostly taught in schools, or I don't know, for some reason, I feel like I'm losing that a little bit with younger musicians, that I could say, oh, that's so-and-so really quick.
Yeah.
It's more the exception now, maybe.
True. Maybe, yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, in 10 years, where these guys will be.
Exactly. I mean, there used to be the thing of territory, like you sound like you were from this area of the world. Yeah. Now, obviously, that's not such an important thing because everybody's listening to the same shit. So I don't know if it might be a little bit of that left, but it's not like it used to be.
No, I agree with you. It's like, for me, like Kurt changed everything on guitar. There came like a bunch of generational players who sound the same as Kurt. They're all awesome, but I don't know anymore, of the younger guys. Right. They're not so young anymore, but who sound amazing, but they sound the same with this slightly delayed guitar sound. And it's like, well, I feel the generation before, like Stern and Schofield and Metheny, all the Frizzell, it's Abercrombie. It's like, damn.
That's true. They're all unique, right? Yeah. All very unique. Yeah.
And it's quite confusing in a way, but also why. It's a question of why, maybe. I don't know.
When I was doing this solo record a few years back,
I love that one. Yeah,
I came to the realization that this is all I really can offer is my own view on things. It's like, and that kind of took the fear out of it. It's like, okay, it doesn't have to be this, doesn't have to be that. It just has to be true to how I perceive this way of playing. So I think that's something that I try to keep in mind in general. It's just like, okay, this is what I got. I'm going to keep on trying to improve that, but it's what I offer is unique because it's me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you would go solo bass, Bar Phillips and Dave Holland or whoever set up the bar so high, or
right,
it's like, okay,
exactly.
Why make a solo bass record then, or whatever, So yeah.
That's right.
Larry, I just wanted to ask you one more thing or two. Actually, like I'm a huge Paul Motian fan, and obviously you played so much with him. What was your experience playing with him? And when you started to play, he was, I think, one of the most special drummers and composers, actually, for me.
Yes.
Around, like, how was your relationship with him, musical and?
Yeah, he's one of those guys like I find with very few band leaders. Charles Lloyd would be another one that all they ask for you to do is show up and give to the music. There's no other expectation. which is, I mean, it sounds obvious, but it's really rare. Even with great band leaders, they might have, well, you might feel very free, but it's in a certain realm of the leader's desires.
Yeah.
With Paul and Charles, it's bizarrely liberating, in that yeah, I think like really the only bad thing you could do is just to not be awake in the music and to be
Mm.
giving something to it. And and both, I mean, there's some real similar. I hadn't really thought about it till now, but between Paul and Charles, I mean, compositionally, uh, the 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 tunes are very open and
Mm-hmm.
simple in a certain way, right?
Vibrato-ish in a way, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of freedom to create within that. With obviously with a connection to the tune, like you're not just playing anything, but playing with Paul, because he was a drummer too, he was able to set the mood for the band. And yeah, it was just always a creative journey,
Mm.
and completely modern and completely traditional.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievably so. Um, I've said this before, but with Paul, I felt almost like his pre-bebop, like it, or early bebop, let's say.
Interesting.
Like a connection with Kenny Clark and
Yeah.
that early transitional era realm. So it always had a root to it, even though a lot of things were rubato, but this connection with a very fundamental swing, you know, and but then completely modern, and
Yeah.
every night would be different. We'd play a lot of the same tunes, maybe in a week at the Vanguard or something,
Yeah.
but just completely different. No, he was great, and yeah. So I think so. The first time I played with Paul was with Larry Goldings on a record of Larry Goldings. We did a trio
Oh
record
yeah,
early
yeah. Oh
on
yeah. Shit, yeah. I talked with Larry about that. Yeah, yeah.
where
Exactly.
he's
That's a
playing
beautiful
piano. Yeah,
record. Yeah.
it's really
Oh,
nice. He
it's a
wrote some
beautiful
great
record.
tunes, and then soon after that, Paul asked me to play on a record of his that was with Chris Potter and Steve Swallow,
Oh yeah. That. Yeah, yeah.
one of the Trio
Trio
2000
2000 plus
records.
one. Yeah. Or yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and then we just started doing gigs. I
Interesting.
say this kind of jokingly, but I think it's kind of true actually. That we did a gig at Carnegie Hall once with Paul and Larry, and after the gig, a bass player came up to me and asked me what was what bass I had, and I said, I don't know what it is, and Paul just loved that answer. He thought that was so great that I didn't give a shit about what type of bass it was. I think he hired me because of that rather than how I
I
played.
can imagine. Almost. No, 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 but it's true. Yeah. He had this attitude, right?
Right, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's like he loved Masabumi because he didn't
Yeah, yeah.
sound like Bill Evans or Keith Jarrett. He liked those kind of enigmas in music, and as do I. It's like I love I love people who are just brutally honest in their playing,
Mm.
and they could be, there could be some gaps in what they're doing musically, but if it's there, it's there, and that's what I savor that. So I think that
Mm.
kind of comes from Paul a bit.
Yeah. He was such a special character. I mean, I ask everyone who played with Paul. I never got the chance to play with him, but
Yeah,
I'm such a fan. I every now and then pick up a tune and just like, damn,
yeah. So
you
many
know.
possibilities, right? And so
Yeah,
much implied by the melodies too.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's really so many great tunes of his, and also it's just his beat. I think time wise, just like metronomic time. I think he was probably the best that I've ever played. I mean, if it
Interesting.
was in tempo, it didn't move. Which brings it back to that earlier era. Like if you're playing for people that are dancing to it, it's got to be right there. You're not going to move by the end of the tune, and it was
Mm.
pretty striking with him. It was just so dead on, but you would not say it was metronomic in any way. It
Oh man,
was
of course.
incredibly human, but very incredibly steady.
Yeah, I find it amazing that the way you play with him, at the same time playing with Jack, let's say.
Mm,
or Bill or Jeff, all these amazing drummers who are completely different.
yeah.
Yet you found like a complete this how to melt with Paul. I mean, that was so beautiful to listen.
No, thank you.
So nice, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, once again, like all these people, they're super easy to play with,
Yeah, of
you
course. Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
right? There's so much clarity to what they're doing. And yeah, I it'd be a lot harder, obviously, with somebody who doesn't give me their musical opinion about things as we're playing. It's like I need that coming from the drums. Show me what you mean by this, and then we'll figure it out together. But
Mm.
I need their perspective too. It can't just be somebody hanging on to me.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a team play. I mean,
yeah,
in the end. Uh,
yeah.
Larry, I wanted to ask you also, working with your wife, I think I have like 5 records of her, and I think you're on all of them. How do you guys work together? I mean, let's say on a weekly or daily situation, do you help each other out musically also, like, or
Well, I mean, we've been together almost 30 years,
yeah,
so it varies over times. There was times when we would be um, playing quite a bit together, touring together, recording, and then there's long gaps where we're not.
yeah, yeah.
And she does a lot of other things in the community, um, advocacy type stuff. So um, she made a record recently. It's just solo. So
Oh,
that
really? I
I'm
have to
not
check it
on.
out. Wow, okay.
Yeah, it just came out.
Oh,
It's
beautiful.
called Her.
Wow, okay.
Oh no, sorry, it's called She, not Her.
Okay.
She.
I'll find it.
Um, um, and So yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, we've had this relationship that's included music, and so we've rehearsed and played together, toured together, recorded together, um, and benefited from the obvious relationship that we have outside of music.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like the ultimate of being able to share in different ways. And I think she's one of the great songwriters.
Yeah, yeah,
And
definitely.
and also that record we did with Paul was really special for me. That was when Rebecca was, I think, 8 months pregnant with our
Oh,
son.
wow.
So
Oh, shit. Wow.
it was
Okay.
it was memorable in many ways. And that's true. Now I think of that record, and then I think the next month I did that record with Brad and Pat and Jeff, and
Oh, wow.
that
Okay.
that was when she was 9 months pregnant. So she was due any day when that was that was a
Good
little
time, yeah.
stressful, but it all worked out. Um, but yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing to make music with your partner and to share that and to listen to music together and to grow together.
Yeah, it's
It's
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I did this talk a while ago with Steve Swallow, and I loved, and I love Steve's compositions. I mean, we all do, right? He's a great composer.
Yes.
And then I asked
Amazing.
him about this, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I really suck. My tunes are nothing compared to Carlos." I was like, "Man, come on." The kids
Right.
sometimes would go to Carla just for advice or whatever. Like, I was like, "Come on, Steve."
Beautiful,
It's so
beautiful. Yeah,
funny,
well,
man.
that's
Yeah,
self-effacing, it's
yeah,
always
I
fun.
love that. That's why I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you that. So,
But yeah, I mean, I feel that way I feel that way compositionally with a lot of people, being around Brad too, but
hmm,
or Pat, or Mark.
all these guys.
But Rebecca too, it's like she comes to composition in a very different way than, let's say, Brad does.
Absolutely.
Um, and I appreciate both ways tremendously, and I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle and not quite not quite at either shore, kind of swimming towards each. But um, yeah, I mean that it's really interesting like Rebecca writes on guitar,
Hmm.
but in a way that she's not thinking E minor 7.
Yeah, yeah.
She's just so it's kind of coming from a more maybe pop way, but to me as interesting and as creative and as
I agree.
uh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I bought Middle Hope. It was one of the first records by her. Like, but that's like
Oh
what,
yeah,
25 years ago already, I think, something like
that
that.
that's
I
with
remember.
Kurt, right? Is
Yeah,
that with
yeah.
Kurt?
It's such a
Yeah,
beautiful record, man. It's like
yeah.
it's impressed. I was on Fresh Sound as well then, and I think I
Okay.
bought all of the records on Fresh Sound in that period.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I was like, man, it's so beautiful. Like, such a nice record.
Nice. Oh, it's great.
Really nice tunes. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Uh, Larry, not to take too much of your time, what's the schedule for you for this year? I mean, gigging wise, do you have some special projects come? Do you have some plans of coming to Europe again, or
Yeah,
also?
I'll be there pretty soon. I'm kind of I'm this is February. I'm kind of home the next couple of months, just kind of playing in town, which is nice. You
Yeah,
know, no planes for 2 months, so that's going to be nice. And I've been trying to record a bit more, try to take more of that since I'm home. But then yeah, I'll be in Europe. You know, I'll play with got some tours with Charles Lloyd this
oh,
year,
beautiful.
and this this nice band with Gonzalo Rubalcaba and Chris Potter and Eric
Really?
Harland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, um, and just different things, you know, to kind of keep it moving and stay active. You know, and if I'm home, I should be practicing. Actually, the bass is right over there,
Okay.
but you know. I don't know. Like I kind of need the inspiration of a gig to to get going. So I mean, I'll pick it up every day, but you know, I like the gigs show me what to practice typically.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, yeah, it's all good. You know, you need breaks too. You know,
Absolutely.
I'll be 59 next week. This week I'll be
Wow.
59. So I could take some time off.
Oh man. Yeah. You know Jerome Harris, right? The bass player.
Of course, yeah.
Jerome told me once, like we were talking about also his band leading stuff, and he was like, "Okay, man, yeah, you know, I'm a musician, bass player, but I'm first of all also a father and a husband and a human and
Exactly.
everything." I was like, "Shit, man, yeah, you're so right, you know, like
Yeah.
it's not only about music, it's
Of course it's not. And that's a
so
maturity thing that we
exactly,
realize as we get, you know, at first it is all about music and that's okay too, you know. But at a certain point, yeah, you end up not all of us, but you know, for you know, had a family and you know, now my son is in college. So
yeah,
it's like that next phase of okay, now what? Which is a little it's not scary, but it's like a little new territory, you know, of well, what's going to take that time that was used for my son? You know, now he's got it. He's cool. So it's really it's an interesting moment, and it's funny that it's happening right now when I'm kind of home for these 2 months,
mm,
and it's kind of processing it. And it's also winter. It's super cold here in New York, and so you know, it's like trying to stay warm and keep my fingers in shape. You know, and
that's
keep it
nice, man.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, man. Yeah. Well, I think that's we started with band leading, so that will slowly like you'll see. No,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
but uh, man, I'll leave it in a nice cold New York afternoon. So, but thanks, man, for taking
Beautiful.
the time. I really appreciate
Of
it. And
course, my pleasure to talk to you. It was really
yeah.
fun.
Dr. Jazz.